Hey everybody, it's Stu Smith and Jeff Nichols here with Tactical Fitness Report, and today we are going to answer a question, a very commonly asked question. Jeff and I get a lot about the older guy prepping for buds, right? I actually just wrote an article because you and I just weren't getting our TFRs as regularly as we have been, and so I just wrote an article, put it up on military.com, but came up with several things, and Jeff and I are going to break down the old guy prepping for buds, right, or any special ops activity for that. Here's the very first thing, though. A lot of misconceptions that older guys after 25 are kind of washed up and they haven't done anything. I wish I was 25. Right now. I mean, that was probably some of the best in shape I've ever been.
Well, 25 with the mindset that you have currently. That's
yeah, that'd be ideal, man.
Yeah, I didn't like, I was beat up at 25 because I was still like mostly high octane fuel.
Yes. Yeah. So, 25, 26, 27. That's the older guy, we're going to call it, that's getting ready for bud. So,
and that's when I went through selection. So I went through buds I went through at 22, turned 23 in second phase. When I went through selection, I was 27, 28. So I had to repeat the process essentially at 27, 28 years old, going through, well, a much stricter and much more difficult, physically demanding, I think. Not the buds, it wasn't demanding, but the stuff I did in selection physically was far more demanding as a whole than buds ever was.
Right.
That's just my perspective. It just, because the standards are much, much higher. So that's why we kind of decided to talk about this topic. Because also, Stu and I, we're not particularly young, but we don't feel old, and we're not particularly old. So we're going to try our best to give you a viewpoint of somebody, help you guys begin the process of starting. Because one of the things that I think that emotionally we get from older guys that want to come in is they're just kind of confused on where they should start.
Yes.
Once you create a starting point for these older athletes, I hate saying older, but older 25, 26-year-old athletes, it really goes, oh, okay, I can start there. Okay. And once you have that starting point, a lot of those older athletes can charge pretty quick.
Right. And it's typically is like, be honest with yourself. What's your weakness, right? Yeah. Start with your weakness, make that weakness no more. But, as with any of these guys, you have one performance standard. It doesn't matter if you're 18 or you're 28. You have one standard, right? You don't get, easy points for being 28 years old in this. So you still have to perform, like everybody else that's 10 years or maybe 8 years younger than you.
Yeah.
So,
right.
But that's not impossible. 28 is not old. Like I said, I got better and better and better until at one point I just broke down about 30 and everything fell apart. But that was because I didn't know how to train really well, and I wasn't really into periodization. I just stayed constant,
hard all the time,
everything. I mean, my 20s were just nuts.
Yeah.
But the big thing is the number one physiological issue with the older guy is just recovery time, right? Your recovery time will be a little slower than the guy who is 18 years old or 19 years old. But there's some positives to that too. One, you're a little more mature, and than the 18-year-old. So there's some give and take, with the age issue, and I think it's a lot easier to learn how to recover than it is to become mature.
Yeah.
Right. So I think
fortunately,
we have some advantages.
Fortunately, the human body is pretty good at taking on a little bit of wear and tear. And there's kind of two trains of thought: is the older athlete trying to prep for special selection has got a lot of mileage on them from previous lifestyle. And so them trying to get healthy to get on track is the one path. The other one is someone that's older that doesn't necessarily have the mileage because they there's a block of time where they just kind of physical preparation wasn't a goal. It wasn't a priority in their lives. So it's really them to get back on track is less about getting healthy. It's just about getting that general foundation back that they once had.
Right.
So that's kind of the two people that we tend to get messages from. And in their own right, they're similar, but they're very different. But the approach again, you're going to see that the approach for an older athlete isn't that dissimilar. It just really changes the timeline. Because if someone says, hey, I'm 25, about to turn 26 in 8 months, I got to get my package in. Well, that's the big question mark. based off of what that individual is. Were they sedentary or were they had a lot of mileage? Well, how do we get them ready in 8 months? That's where the big question mark is. That's the huge question mark. And so that's where the conversation should begin.
Yeah, that's where it depends. It depends on all of that. Now, I will say too, there's I give you guys hear me all the time talk about the 18-year-old are just not mature typically, right? Statistically speaking, the 18-year-old is not mature enough. However, I have seen the older guys have some mental baggage as well, right? They're a little bit older. They've got some life experiences. They may have a very comfortable job on the back end that they can always go back to. Maybe their fleet transfers, maybe or whatever. They have a wife and kids, right? And, it's real easy to say, yeah, this isn't for me. I'm getting out of here. So not necessarily, the maturity factor hits a maximum end on the older guy as well. So there are some challenges there that you really have to be sure that you're into this, your family's into this, you got support, because that support system will help you become unstoppable.
Yeah.
If it's there.
Yeah. I don't know if the Navy can really regulate this or they didn't, because I remember it being in my bud's class. It probably happened in yours, and it probably still happens unless there's enough foresight to stop it. There were guys in my bud's class that were near the end of their EAOS, end of service date, enlisted, like they were a year out. They get orders cut to buds. They go to buds. They quit first day. Then they're in limbo for 6 months. They can't get reassigned to a ship because, so they basically just got a year of shore duty in Coronado.
Yeah.
Doing minimal work to end out their naval career. And there was a number of people. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that understand that buds it's such a unique environment that you see people do things you never thought they would do, both good and bad, and go, holy crap, I never thought that person can make it. Oh, holy crap, I never thought that person would quit. And as far as that's relevant to the older athlete, that's kind of what I've seen. Some of the older guys are there because they know that's their last chance.
Yep.
They respect, like, hey, I only get one crack at this, because at 26, if I quit, I'm never going to make it back to buds. I'll be too old.
Yeah.
Then you have guys that, like kind of what Stu said, is that potentially they're like, man, I'm just tired of being on this ship stationed somewhere I don't want to be. I'm fit enough to go through this, but I'm just going to get out of the Navy. I'm done. So why not do it in Coronado? So they'll have a handful of guys that will screen and purposely just to quit. They'll class up a day. They'll spend like a day or two in buds, and they'll just disappear.
Wow.
So it's very interesting that things like that happen, but they do. But as far as the older athlete, I think that there's a little bit more of an advantage than there is a disadvantage.
Absolutely.
Just by percentages of things, of categories that Stu had mentioned, like here's all the reasons why.
Yeah.
I think that there's more physical potential in an older athlete than there is a younger as a whole. But also there's more on the mental side too. There's more mental potential.
Yes.
As a higher percentage. That's all.
I agree 100%. Now, like I said, I was just given the far end of the extremes of the, on the mental baggage side that some older guys carry in. But, I will say this, we mentioned the recovery, the performance isn't an issue. I've seen plenty of guys mid-20s, late 20s, even early 30s that are crushing it physically, have no reason why. And another reason too is, they're through growing, right? A lot of the injuries that you get from the younger guys, I mean, their bones are still soft. They're still growing at 18, 19, even 20 years old. So you have some impact injuries that can really affect, whether it's tendonitis or stress fractures or those type of things, that shin splints that occur on the younger athlete, as well.
It's an interesting mix, because I did say there's potentially some previous mileage that have been put on these older athletes. Sometimes, in my case, I think the mileage that I put on was actually good mileage, if you want to call it that. Like I had strength coaches, I had good sport coaches, I had this willingness to want to learn from a young age. So I had a lot of mileage, possibly, I guess, but a lot of that miles had accumulated over the years in athletics with decent athletics. So that's kind of this weird recipe for success. for a lot of guys at Buds. That's what I see. Like if you look at Stu and I, and this is not always the case, but if Bud's graduation is a bell curve, we have extremely high performance athletes on one end of the bell curve. The other end, you guys that just squeak by. Well, the 80% of that bell curve, or we'll say the middle, like the most prominent 40% or 50% of that bell curve are previous athletes.
Yeah.
You know, not stellar athletes, but for those of, when I say, this is what I mean by athletes, been playing sports since they were children, like just and being active.
Right.
And that's what you see a lot with the older athletes. They've done that. And then you've got guys that go into the business world or the world of work. They're like, this isn't for me. And it's almost like a good rest period. So they kind of became a little bit almost sedentary. Their body healed after those years of high school and college athletes or college club sports. And then they've took 4 years off and their body's healed. They may be out of shape,
but they can get back into shape.
Yep,
give themselves a year to build up and get in shape to head out there.
That's been my experience with the older guys, kind of.
Yeah, mine too. I have seen it a couple different ways. I've seen it a difficult journey for guys who have the sedentary job, right? If you have a banker's job, banker hours, you're sitting in a cubicle in the air conditioning all day. It may take a little bit longer to get to the level you need to be because, you might work out 2 hours in the morning, might work out at lunch, might work out in, later, but that sedentary lifestyle is somewhat challenging. Now, it's not impossible. You just have to make it harder. You have to squeeze in those lunch swims. You have to get that second workout in the evening. And of course, not every day do you need to do 3 workouts a day,
right?
But you just need to be active. Where I've seen it very successful are the guys that come into workouts in the morning, 6 to 8 a.m., go to work, maybe say construction, landscaping, doing something like that. We've had a couple recent 26, 27-year-olds that, had a fairly active manual labor job. And, some worked in a warehouse just peddling, pushing food around and, distribution business. And, they just stay busy lifting stuff and carrying things. And that was a great way to just stay busy throughout the day, because what's Bud's going to be? You're going to have a 2-hour event that's pretty physical. Then you're going to be running around doing a whole bunch of little things, right? Maybe some technique stuff, may go swimming, may do some drown proofing, not overly physical, but some technique issues, right? And then you go do something else, take a little time, do something else, maybe have something else physical later in the day. So if you can spread your day into this, 12-hour work period, so to speak, you're going to cover your day at Bud's 9 times out of 10.
For sure.
Right. And I remember myself, and think about this as perspective too. In fact, I think I'm going to write an article about perspective, because here's the 2 perspectives that people have at Bud's. The Bud's, that guy that doesn't make it and guy that makes it. The perspective of the guy that makes it at Bud's will go through a Bud's day, do all his things he's supposed to do. At the end of the day, he's going to say, holy crap, I don't need to go work out. I don't need to go do homework. I don't need to go get ready for, whatever. My day is done. It's 6 p.m. My day is done after dinner.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow,
chill out.
What happens? I can just relax. Whereas at the end of the day, the other guy is just, oh my God, I'm exhausted. This is the hardest day of my life. Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
perspective.
It's preparation, and it's 2 different perspectives. And that is wrapped around preparation. Your perspective, either one of those 2 perspectives, are going to be wrapped around your preparation and, how you treat your weaknesses.
And that the thing, like my number 1 piece of advice is we got to find a starting point. And the same thing can be said for the 18-year-old as a 26-year-old, is like, practice your weaknesses first. You won't have any. That is probably the most crucial piece of advice I can give an older athlete, because we don't have time to waste. And ego and all these sort of things, like, well, yeah, but I'm really strong. I'll make up for it. I'll gut through the run. No, you won't.
Yeah.
Like if running is the biggest problem you have, or swimming, or whatever it is, like if you are an older athlete and you struggle in one of the particular areas of the PST, we're not even at Bud's yet. You know what I mean? That's the tricky thing, is that we got to first prepare for the PST. And if you're running a 12.5-minute mile, but you've got your push-ups and pull-ups and everything are good, your swim is okay, whatever it is, your only focus at that point should be running.
Yeah.
Running, no, let me rephrase that. Your primary focus should be running.
There you go.
And then ancillary to that is like, well, that's a really great time. That's probably the ideal candidate to get back into body weight training, aside from the young athlete that's never really done any resistance training. They're two almost the same folks in some way.
Yeah, sure.
So the older athlete, get them on the road, mileage, for example, if the running is needs, right? But the question is like, well, how often do I run? Well, I don't need you to run every day. Well, what do I do on my off days? Well, this is a great opportunity to work on calisthenics because the focus is still running. And as your running improves, you start phasing out calisthenics and start phasing in resistance training or other avenues of skill acquisition. So that's just using running as an example for an older athlete. And that's where people tend to kind of spin their wheels for maybe a month or two trying to figure stuff out as an older athlete. Well, we've just shortened that timeline from 8 months, we'll say, to 6.5.
Yeah.
You don't have time to waste as an old athlete. So it's crucial. You start out by training your weakness. As sucky as that is, like, well, I can't run every day because it beats me up. That's where you're at, man. It might just be a long walk then at times.
Yeah. Or, do a hard non-impact option in between. So
yeah, exactly.
Like if you don't run but 10 miles a week or less, last thing you want to do is start off with a 20-mile week of running. So just run every other day with good, hard, non-impact interval work. Bike, elliptical, swimming, rowing, whatever. Get that VO2 max up there and start working. But then on the other days, work on your pace that you need to have competitive scores in order to get to the training. Just like Jeff and I did a series a while back ago, to and through training. I mean, that's what you have to do right now. You got to get to the training first. And if you're an older guy, especially borderline age waiver work, you got to be crushing it, right? Because they're not even going to take you seriously for an age waiver. Or here's the borderline age waiver.
Here's also been my experience, and I think Stu would probably repeat it. The older athletes we're not the ones that are at the waiver point, but the ones that are borderline waiver point.
Right.
They come in and crush the PST. I can say from what I've heard from people associated to Naval Social Warfare, those mentors and stuff, that's what they like. They like to see that 25-year-old athlete come in here and crush the PST. Because statistics are showing that those older athletes that are physically prepared have a higher success rate.
Yes.
That's just is it 70-30? No. But when we're dealing with an 84% failure rate from the history of this program, the 5 or 10% improvement based off of age and preparation
is big.
I'll take that all day.
Yeah.
That's good. That's Vegas money right there. Odds aren't even that good in Vegas. So it's just one of those things that and again, the same thing can be said about a younger athlete, the 21-year-old that really prepared well starting at 18, or the person that started at 17 and prepared to 19. It really comes down to preparation and don't, especially for the older athlete. This is where people I'm old, I'm big, I'm bad. I jump in, they overtrain, we lose 2 months. And they only had 8 months. So incremental changes, incremental increases, incremental additions to whatever, work, force, speed, whatever it is imperative for the older athlete because we don't have time to waste.
Yeah, and you have to get specific fast.
Yep.
Right? You got to get specific to that PST and if you're going to get to the training. And then you got to get specific to the training to better prepare for that. Swimming longer swims with fins, 4-mile timed runs, load bearing. We usually simulate log PT with just, sandbags, over our shoulder, even put sandbags on our head and like move as fast as we can with those just to kind of,
get used to it.
Boat pounding on your head. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do to simulate, some of the specifics of training. And, if you just get a little bit creative with what you're about to endure, you can start adding those things in once you've started crushing the PST. You start crushing that PST, then that can be like back burner stuff that you can always draw on it when you need it to have a good PST score. It's there.
Right.
and then you can build that foundation to get through the training. So what I would recommend, we've already done this, we've already talked about this, Jeff. Have you guys, the older guys that are watching this, go check out the Get To and Through Buds videos that we did. Also check out our recovery day after a Buds day is done. Because that's where we talk about stretching and foam rolling and nutrition and soft tissue massage, car buffers,
float tanks, ice buckets,
compression clothing,
compression garments,
and sleep.
There you go.
And all that. I mean, all of that's going to be very critical to the older athlete. Yeah, I saw a funny post the other day that said it's all fun and games until your metabolism slows. That's when you get into your 30s and 40s. But your body is changing a little bit. It's not as resilient as it was at 18, but you're smarter than you were when you're 18.
And I believe because of resiliency or of the body's ability to accommodate stress, in some ways gets better, but some ways it gets worse. Like we look at it from a standpoint of like, oh my goodness, it takes a bit longer. Like that's a negative. No, I look at it going, my body is better communicating my needs. Like, oh, I'm really, really sore. And I'm normally not this sore when I was younger. Okay, your body is telling you that the importance is greater. It's communicating better back to you.
Oh, I like that.
Pay attention.
That's another perspective.
It is.
My body is communicating to me better.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's being very clear. It's like, my shoulder hurts. Well, then stop using it.
Yeah.
Well, how did I get to that point? You probably overdid it. Maybe not even in shoulders. It may have been too much pulling, dynamic. It could be a million things, but the point is we got to stop wondering why we're in pain when we are in pain. It's because of a mistake or overuse, which is potentially a mistake. But that's the beauty of the older athlete. They go, a lot of us that have had mileage, we go, I've been here before.
If I do one more rep, I'm hurt.
We did that. Like my house guest, my athlete that was here this week, he's a pro athlete, has been forever, for years, a legend. And he's like, we were working the last set of deadlifts, hex bar deadlifts, lightweight, 185s. We're doing speed work. And he did like third rep and he goes, Jeff, I'm done. I go, that's the difference between young you and old you. It's like, that's your limit.
Yep.
And now we can heal past that. The body goes, whoa. Yep.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
Pay attention. Old guys are awesome because the body is telling us everything. Listen to it.
It is a more efficient communicator.
Yeah, it is. It's persistent.
Yeah, I like that.
So,
I guess let's close this up with just a basic misconception, right? For you guys that think 25 is over the hill or 26 is over hill, that you missed your shot at 18 years old. That is not true. Right? There's a reason why there is a decade-long window for people who want to go into special ops, Buds specifically, right? It's from 17 to 28. I think like under 29 is basically where they put you, right? So right there is a very long window. If you're in that window, there's a chance, right? Now, you got to work. You got to work and prepare just like everybody else. And it's that I think that is a misconception that I would like to kind of get out there. It is not it's one of those myths that I think we need to dispel because it's I think you have a lot more to offer. You're 25 years old is a great age to go to Buds.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, if we can and we should use comparisons in some things between the tactical population and sport. Look at 25-year-old athletes in all spectrum of sports that you're commonly associate to popularity: baseball, football, basketball, hockey, depending where you're at, wrestling, boxing, whatever it may be. Now, women's gymnastics not on the table, but we don't have 14-year-old women going to Buds. So let's take a look and see what athletes typically in age groups perform at the highest level, 23 to 28. That's your highest performers, right? In most sports, right? Not 18.
Yeah, and your veterans, right? Which when you go to your team, you'll be a new guy at your team, and you're going to see guys in their 30s, in their 40s, right?
Still performing at a high level.
And where you were, guys that have been in for 20, 25 years are still doing it, right? And you know, that comes with a lot of care for your training and a lot of basically duct tape putting everything back together. I mean, because if you look at a 40-year-old professional football player, right, they're rare, right? Just like 40-year-old special operators, you know, they are rare if they are still operating. They may still be in training somewhere, but they are pretty rare. I think they're getting better with the advent of the new training human performance program that Spec War has, and that all the other special ops and SOCOM have. It is building resilient warriors that are able to stay active a lot longer.
Because what it's really doing, folks, is it's teaching an older population of guys that want to stay in that the aches and pains that they commonly associate to the idea of like, well, I'm just getting older. This is just something I have to deal with. There is some truth to that, but the beauty of the resiliency and the capability of the human body, that's not the truth. That's really not the overall arching truth. I feel better now than I did when I was 25, and I'm almost 40. That's because I'm really, really finally listening to my body. I'm taking time. I'm not pressing when I don't need to press, but I'm being in it's weird by me not pressing so hard, not literally press, but when I say pressing, by me not making every day's training as intense as I can, what I've done is I don't lose training days anymore.
Right.
I've lost a couple training days this last year, oddly in November because of my back, but I haven't missed a training day in over 4 years, other than on purpose, right? Hey, I'm going to take these days off. I'm not feeling good. I'm going to take today off.
Yep.
And now I look at the last 4 years of my life going, no wonder why I feel better. No wonder why I'm sleeping. No, it's not a mystery. I finally started taking stock in the power of recovery.
Oh, absolutely. I would say for me, you know, throughout my 40s and next year when I turn 50, it has been the addition of mobility days once a week, a day off once a week, and good sleep. You know, obvious nutrition. Yeah, you got to eat well too. But I think those three have really saved me. The mobility day, the day off, and good sleep. I mean, because that's
agreed. It's, I mean, that is the common thread, folks. For us, it's common thread for athletics. It's common thread in high performance sports and tactical populations. It's the common thread in the executive population that's extremely successful at times. So, or just what I consider an extreme success is like a very happy husband and wife, home's life that they're managing their kid and the kids are in bed on regular, like it's a lifestyle.
Yep.
And it's very achievable, but it might be a little bit tough to get started.
Yeah, it's a habit you got to build, and it takes time. Like I said, I did not do any of this in my 20s.
Yeah. And I'm not. I'm still. There's still a lot more I want to accomplish as far as like how do I make this even a little bit better? Can it be done? And that's the beauty of where we live at with social media and the focus on dietetics and the focus on sleep in the retail spaces. Now, sometimes we can get saturated with options, but for many of these things, there are options, natural options out there for almost anybody that will see a pretty quick improvement.
Yep, absolutely. So, all right, the old guy prepares for buds. And I would say the key word is prepare.
Prepare.
Also is recovery. And, yeah.
Be patient. Patient you can once you create a timeline.
Yeah. Work on weaknesses.
That's it.
There you go. Hey, Jeff, thanks for this one. This was a commonly asked question for both of us, I know. So I'm glad we got this one on video.
All right, Stu, thanks a lot.
All right, man. We'll see you.